Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Jane's DC tonight, coming to you live from our nation's capital on the Exceptional Conservative Network. Please stay with us tonight. We've got a great show. I know everyone is trying to deal with the coronavirus issue, and we're going to talk about that a lot tonight. My two guests are Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who's a senior fellow at the MAGA Institute, and he's also done a tremendous amount of work on behalf of our country with China in terms of national security. So we've got some great questions for the General. We've had him on late last year, and so I've got some great questions for him. We're also going to talk to Brooke McGowan, who's the founder of the MAGA Institute, which is part of and in partnership with Americans for Smaller Government, the organization that Rick Manning founded and is affiliated with. So let's get started right away because we're going to talk to the General very close to 10 minutes after. But first, my DC rant. I want you guys to look very closely at this. Now, what is this? This is the number of worldwide deaths between January and February of this year. Topping the list here, but not in number, at the top of my list rather, is 2,360 coronavirus deaths in the world in January and February of this year. If you look below that, these are the numbers of other deaths and what they're related to. Almost 70,000 people died of the common cold in the world in just January and February. 153,000 plus people died of suicide in the world in the last 2 months. 193,000 died of road accidents. 240,000, almost 241,000 people died of HIV. Yes, people are still dying of HIV, and it's an epidemic worldwide. 716,000 people died of smoking in January and February. And 1,177,000 people died of cancer. Now, I want you to think about that in terms of the coronavirus deaths. Now, am I suggesting that you don't heed the warning of the authorities and the medical professionals? Of course not. But I want you to think, and I want you to start to use your own faculties of evaluation in addition to what you're hearing from our authorities. And of course, we have to take what the media says very, very carefully. Listening to the media is your only source of information is very dangerous. Now I want to show you one other thing here. This is incredibly interesting. This is a week by week number, not cumulative, because the numbers, you see the bars go up and down. They're by the week numbers of both influenza A and influenza B. These are what you would consider as a layperson the normal flus that happen almost every year that run through the world. If you look at the last two, you'll see 2020-10, that's the 10th week, that's last week. And the one before that is, I'm going to start with the one before it, 2020, well actually it's 08, but the bar in between those two is 09. But if you look across at the vertical axis, that's the up and down axis, that's the number of positive reported cases of the combination of A and B flu in the week before last, 1 week, in the United States, by the way, this is not in the world, there were 15,000 cases of influenza A and B. Last week, which was the 10th week of the year, in the United States, you have about 10,000 combination of influenza A and B. So what I'm asking you to do is to look at everything across the board. Again, I'm just building here, and I'm exploring things myself, and I'm looking at things critically. And I think the president is looking at things critically. He had a presser today and basically said that this, right soup to nuts, like the complete end of it, would be expected to be July, August. Okay, we know that's going to happen. We don't know the exact date, but we know viruses burn out. The summer comes, it's warmer. After quarantining a lot and blocking borders and flying into the country, we know that things are going to slow down and the virus is going to run its course, like all viruses do. Even Ebola ran its course after containment. When they asked him about recession, I want to play a quick thing for you here. You know, they just want to bring it to recession. Oh, we've got a recession. The Democrats and the media. Oh, see, Trump ended up with a recession. Yeah, okay, take a listen to this. It's not a recession. We may be slammed into a temporary recession, but to me it's artifact. It's a function of something else. We know underneath the hood, our economy is raging. Okay.
Market took another hit today. Is the U.S. economy heading into a recession? Well, it may be. We're not thinking in terms of recession. We're thinking in terms of the virus. Once we stop, I think there's a tremendous pent-up demand, both in terms of the stock market and in terms of the economy. And once this goes away, once it goes through and we're done with it, I think you're going to see a tremendous surge.
But what did the markets do? Because of the enemy of the state, disgusting media and press in the United States, the market tanked again by 3,000 points, which is baloney. I'm asking you just to compare this situation with other illnesses and the regular flu, and ask yourself if these numbers we're seeing are reflective of or justify a panic. Now, what am I showing you here? Take a quick look at this. This is on the top. These are two different pictures. The picture on the top is from the Johns Hopkins University real-time coronavirus tracker. If you look at the top one, this is when you look at the North America portion of it. It looks, with these red bubbles, the way they've got it set up, like the country is blowing up with coronavirus. But remember, we're only up to worldwide about 4,100 cases, or I'm sorry, 4,100 deaths. Okay. The picture below, if you really look at it carefully, is when you zoom in on the United States, you can see that it's not blowing up, but there are these scattered bubbles. Yes, more concentrated in others. The majority of the bubbles are kind of like, there are some large ones, there are some smaller ones, and there's some medium ones, right? When I clicked on one of the medium-sized ones down like around Columbus, Ohio, I got like 38 active cases and no deaths in that state. That's active cases. They could have had some where people got better. So all I'm saying is, when you're cleaning out, all the toilet paper and all, some of the other ridiculous things that people are doing, again, just think about, you're being prompted to panic. So let's take it easy. Let's follow the president's lead. This is my theory, and we're going to talk to the guests about it tonight. My theory is that the desperate Dems who've run through Russia, collusion, in election interference, Mueller report, impeachment, they're out of everything. So I don't know how the whole thing connects yet, but a lot of people are looking into this, and I know it's phony, and I think they'll do anything to stop this president. And you should all be pissed off about it. Okay. He did say today, I want everybody to know who's watching our show tonight, that he's not going to institute a full national quarantine. There was a lot of rumor about that. He said it's happening in certain cities. He leaves the governors and mayors of cities, if they know what's going on the ground there. So some of them have instituted complete bans of restaurants and bars and other places where people regularly gather, like churches and things like that, but not for the nation. We want our small businesses to survive. We want our medium-sized businesses, and yes, and even our big businesses to survive. These are the underpinnings of the incredibly raging and roaring economy. Okay. Look, it's 8:10, and I'm done with my rant. I'm really excited to see our first guest tonight. Let me bring him in. Really excited to talk to the General tonight. Let me reintroduce the General. He's been a guest on the show before. It's really fun to have him on. He's so brilliant, and his appearance tonight is incredibly timely. Brigadier General Robert Spalding is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, focusing on U.S.-China relations, economic and national security, and the Asia-Pacific military balance. He's author of the upcoming book, maybe the already published, we'll ask him, called Stealth War: How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. General, welcome to the show tonight.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
General, I'm sure you have a lot to say about what's happening, but I'm very suspicious that China has one of the only 10 level 4 biosafety labs in the world, and I want to know if, you think China created this situation.
Well, what I say is, of course, it's impossible to know. We would need to get our CDC officials in there and actually do an investigation to find out what the origin of the virus is. And of course, the Chinese Communist Party hasn't allowed us to do that. What I can say is that I'm equally confident in the numbers coming out of the Chinese Communist Party as I am in a statement saying it was made in the lab. And the truth is because I don't trust anything that comes out of China. So the Chinese Communist Party just can't be trusted. So we don't know. We have no idea.
You must have intel sources or former friends. Do you get at least a sense that the virus is as bad as it was there, and is it slowing down? Two different questions.
Well, there again, I think we're dependent on the reporting coming out of the Chinese Communist Party, so we don't know. I think, in terms of the P4 lab, we do know that they were doing work on coronavirus because that's been previously reported. We also know that they had a strain of coronavirus that had been specifically designed to infect humans. But there again, we just don't have enough information on the ground, and I don't think we ever will, quite frankly. So I'm focused on what's going on outside of China. Of course, if they would have done what any other, free nation would do in terms of this, they'd have controlled it long before it got out and given everybody a warning so that we could have stopped travel. And of course, we couldn't do that. That being said, the president acted quite quickly to stop travel to and from China, which I think slowed down the spread of the infection. Now it's up to us to focus on how we deal with it. And I think the president has been quite prudent there. So, the president did what he could in terms of our border control. Now it's up to us as citizens to, do the right thing in terms of social distancing and practicing good hygiene. And I think what we'll be able to do is come through this with relatively unscathed.
I just find the timing of this. I know that viruses and flus a lot of times come out of the Far East, and they come out during the time that we saw it, like late or early winter, rather, into early to late spring. But I mean, given the political climate and all of the heavy, trade, sanctions and things like that President Trump has imposed, do you find it suspicious at all that they are such a major player and that possibly if they were working on this virus, they released it?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that I have to go on is that myself and my family were actually there during the SARS outbreak. So we lived in Shanghai at the time and were evacuated, and it was a similar time frame, and it was less infectious than the coronavirus. But in terms of the response, there's been no real change in terms of how they responded to both things. So in terms of how this coronavirus began, whether it was self-mutate, or it was created in the lab, and whether it was released on purpose or released on an accident. Again, we're not going to know that because of the secretive nature of the Chinese Communist Party.
One of the things I was showing our audience, and I'll put it up here. Tell me if you can see this. It's a list of worldwide deaths from January to February of this year. This was circulating around social media today. Can you see this slide, General?
I can.
Okay. The point of it is, even though worldwide deaths have gone up to 4,100 roughly from coronavirus, you see this list below of all these other causes of death in the world in those same 2 months. And it just looks a little odd in terms of whether this warrants. I mean, I trust President Trump. Let me just say that at the outset. But with that said, doesn't it look a little strange when you compare it to other causes of death in the same time period?
Well, I mean, certainly it's a lot lower. I think what we have going is there's a lot of social media that's creating panic. And, of course, people aren't panicking about the common cold or the flu, which have killed more people. And the pattern of some of this social media is deliberately placed to invoke fear. And so you have to wonder what the who would stand to gain behind the outcome of this. And so these are the challenges that we face today in a globalized, internet connected world. And I think that's one of the things that the Trump administration in the December 2017 National Security Strategy tried to explain to the American people, that we've moved away from where geography is really king when it comes to national security, and we're moving to a world where data and particularly your data and finance and economics are far more important in terms of how geopolitics works. And so, but that being said, corporate America and Wall Street are still very much co-opted by the Chinese Communist Party. So we, in many ways, finds ourselves in the midst of a battle within our own society on, how much should the Chinese have of our data, how much should they be able to be inside of our networks, and how much should they be involved in trade and economics and finance, particularly when their companies aren't required to abide by the same rules that our own companies are. So it's really an uneven playing field that we've built and perpetuated. And now all the chickens are coming home to roost, because not just our military weapons that are being produced in China, some of the parts for those, but also now our medicine and the N95 masks. So we have a big problem.
Yep, we do. And it's going to take a lot for President Trump to try to reverse that. Are you concerned at all about this whole 5G and Huawei's involvement in the development? And can you say a little bit about that for people who don't know what that's about?
Yeah, so the introduction of 5G is supposed to bring great automation to people and improve their lives. One example I try to talk about is when I was a defense attaché in Beijing back in 2017. Back then, you could order food on an app on your phone and then put your phone away and never have to touch it again, because as you walked into the restaurant, a camera would use facial recognition. It would identify you, and then the server would hand you your food and greet you by name, and your transaction was done on the basis of that camera recognizing you coming into the store. This is what 5G is supposed to do. It's supposed to take the world away from your smartphone and build it into the city around you. The challenge we have today is all of that data now is not just in the hands of Facebook, Amazon, and Google, but also in the Chinese Communist Party. And they seek to use that data for economic gain, but also to collect intelligence and influence. And so this is the challenge of the modern future, where data is everywhere. And in a lot of ways, you can use that data to influence people in ways that are counter to their own interests. So when we saw the Russians use these same tools in 2016 after the election to create the protests that marched on Trump Tower 4 days after the election, you begin to realize that our ability to protect our own population from the undue influence of foreign actors is now severely constrained because of the access of these actors to all this data that's in Facebook and Amazon and Google's hands. And so that's what 5G brings, an even more amplified challenge there, because rather than just your smartphone you have to worry about, now everywhere you go, you're being tracked by cameras and microphones.
It sounds like it's something that may be impossible to reverse. What are your thoughts on the future, even the far-flung future?
Well, it's not impossible to reverse. Instead of building what I would call a Chinese network, and that's where we're headed currently with 5G. What we put into the national security strategy was we needed to build secure 5G, and that meant your data needed to be secured in a way that only you had access to. So today we have an open data model, and what the national security strategy calls for is an encrypted data model where your data is locked down and only you have the key. That's really what's required for a digital democracy. And until we actually wake up and begin to institute some of those standards across the United States and the rest of the free world, the Chinese Communist Party are going to have the upper hand, because they have designed a network that's easy to penetrate. And as we see every single day with all the hacks that are going on, this data is being siphoned off to China. And Kai-Fu Lee, who's their leading artificial intelligence researcher, says that China is to data as Saudi Arabia is to oil. So this is their strategy, to essentially own the world's data so that they can dominate economically and also have it for influence and intelligence.
Well, yes, because data is the new, natural resource, I guess. I wanted to ask you, do you think that the whole notion of developing the Space Force is part of maybe some of that cybersecurity that we're going to build in America?
Well, I think the space, particularly commercial space, presents a good opportunity to get out of, particularly on the control plane for our data, relying on Huawei switches, which are essentially all over the world now. So now when our data travels internationally, it travels through Huawei switches. Half of the undersea cables have been laid by Huawei. So they've really created an enormous infrastructure imbalance outside of the United States. So that's one way where space can really help us in protecting our data. And then there's other areas, particularly in resources, that people are looking at in space for a new place to get sources of raw materials and energy.
General, did you hear that there was a cyber attack today on the Department of Homeland Security?
I've heard of numerous attacks, and they happen every single day. And yeah, so I'm familiar with that one, but there's so much more every single day. And this is why, I believe that we're under constant attack. It's not, we don't need to wait for a war to come to us. It's already here. It's been here for the last 20 years. We just haven't woken up to it.
Wow. General, I want to put your book up before we have a couple of minutes left with you. It's called Stealth War, and how China took over while America's elite slept. And I think we've probably talked about a few issues, that you write about. What else should people know about your book, and tell us how they can get it?
Well, I actually wrote it so that if you have no knowledge of China, it's a really easy read, and it's meant to be completed in one reading. It's really a background and summary of everything that I learned in the lead up to the national security strategy. So this is really the last 5 or 6 years of my time in the service, where I had a team working in the Pentagon focused on the competition with China. I try to put everything in there and put it in a way that makes it accessible to people. Of course, you can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. And what I've found is that as people read this, they say, aha, now I understand. So it's been very difficult for people to grasp the challenge that China has for the United States, but the book is really designed to let people know very simply but comprehensively know that we've got a challenge that's existential for our democracy.
And the book is on Amazon, I'm assuming?
It is on Amazon.
And now that you're retired, do we have other up-and-coming General Spaldings taking over this kind of work?
Well, there are people all over the bureaucracy that are beginning to push the bureaucracy in ways that are actually beneficial for our national security in this new world. So I am quite confident that, with Trump's leadership, we've had some good changes, and I think there's more to come.
I certainly hope so, General. Thanks again for giving us some perspective on this coronavirus in China and for everything you've done for our country. It's great to have you on again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, General. Have a great night.
You too.
Well, that was really eye-opening. Every time we have General Spalding on, we learn so much more, and I get more and more concerned about areas and things that I hadn't really even been aware of. Having him on, repeatedly over every couple of months or so really gives us some great insight into how this, and look at how all of this ties together. It's really very interesting when you think about it. So, I wanted to share with you a few other things. We had to go to, we had our interview with General Spalding, and I was just kind of finishing up my nightly rant. I'm going to call it my DC rant every night. I'm doing it anyway. We might as well label it, and you can enjoy it and look for it. I just want you to keep an eye on this China virus thing and watch the media, how they shift and dodge and create their narrative and how they all sing in like a chorus to this thing. What else did I want to tell you? Oh, I'm very proud to announce, it's my own hot mic, that I have been invited and accepted the invitation to become part of the Politichicks. So if you are aware of it, look up Politichicks, thepolitichicks.com, started by Anne Marie Murrell and Morgan Brittany, my apologies. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I've put out an invite to have Anne Marie on. She's the founder of Politichicks. We'll have her on possibly next week or the week after. So good news there. I will be writing more prolifically again, and you will be seeing my articles regularly on Politichicks. So check it out, thepolitichicks.com. And one other thing I wanted to rant about, there was something on Lou Dobbs earlier. Oh, speaking of Lou Dobbs, reminds me of Fox News and censorship. My censorship alert is that I lost 5,000 followers on Twitter overnight. Now, doesn't sound like a lot. I was almost at 30,000, and overnight, and I'm going to tell you what I think precipitated it, because I've been shadow banned before. I've had a 24-hour suspension, and as you know, recently, maybe a month and a half ago or so, I had a 7-day suspension. And now the 5,000, it's like they take currency away from you so you can't speak. That is just silencing me. But every time I get punished, I have spoken out against Ilhan Omar. And I just think she is so protected. Probably one of the most criminal, corrupt people ever elected to Congress. And that's saying a lot, because most of them are. But her level, marrying the brother, divorcing the brother, immigration fraud, coming in under a different family, now lying about her campaign manager, funneling money into his business, and then marrying him. That's her latest husband. So let's see if, I don't know, maybe I'll get taken off of Periscope for that, but okay. And I wanted to say, speaking of, and this is under my censorship alert, Trish Regan was suspended. I think they called it a hiatus. They also called it a hiatus when Judge Jeanine was suspended. Then they brought her back. They claim that Trish will be back, and Trish is being, a good soldier. You might too if you had a seven-figure contract. Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the comments here on Periscope. I really appreciate you guys there. Someone saying Trump failed on coronavirus. No, if you listen to the general, he hit the nail on the head. President Trump did everything he was supposed to do, shut down some of the border, the countries that could fly in early. Your buddy Obama let 12,000 people die before he said a peep about the swine flu. So don't ever tell me that President Trump has failed in coronavirus. And don't ever sell President Trump short. Yeah, Trish and Kennedy on hiatus. If you believe that, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you, and a couple other things I'd like to sell you. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. They were suspended. Trish was suspended because she was tying the coronavirus from China to an attempt to take down President Trump. But don't ever sell this man short. He always comes out in the end. And luckily, he's working with and for us to protect us now. We're going to go to a short break. Don't leave. When you come back, I will have Brooke McGowan, and we'll get into it with her, how the coronavirus is affecting our American healthcare system, surprise medical billing, and how it ties in with China and what they're trying to do. Because we got them by the ropes on this trade issue, and they're not going to win.
This is Dr. Jane Ruby in Washington, D.C., author of A Sea of New Media. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this book because I was inspired to write it by Andrew Breitbart, who actually vindicated the Tea Party after they were falsely accused of calling 3 African-American congressional leaders the N-word, and nobody could come up with a video or an audio. So he told them weeks later, and on the National Mall, to hold up their cell phones, and thousands of people held up their cell phones, and you could see this beautiful in the night, and he said, there you have a sea of new media to capture the lies. Folks, we can't trust our mainstream media. We cannot trust our press.
When you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
When President Trump says they're the enemy of the people, he's not being a dictator. He's telling the truth. They won't tell us the truth. But if we all have our cameras out in public, they can't lie if thousands of us are showing a video of something happening or not happening. So I encourage you to pick up a copy of the book. It's called A Sea of New Media. And if you think you can't make a difference, think about the guy who caught Hillary Clinton on tape, the average citizen caught Hillary Clinton being dragged into the van at the 9/11 memorial in 2016. We never would have known she was ill if it wasn't for that single individual citizen. Pick up a copy of A Sea of New Media on Amazon, and if you happen to see me around DC, I'll be happy to sign the book for you and give you a big hug. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and I have a show in DC called Dr. Jane's DC, Tuesday and Thursday nights on the Exceptional Conservative Network. Please join me again. I'm Dr. Jane Ruby. See you next time.
I apologize. I don't have any audio. Dr. Jane, I don't have any audio. I can't hear you.
Oh, Brooke, I'm so sorry.
There
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Oh my gosh! We have once in a while a little bit of a tech glitch, so I'm going to apologize again to you in the audience. I'm going to give you a quick intro so that people know who you are. I'm so excited to have you on tonight, folks. Brooke McGowan is co-founder of the MAGA Institute, which is working alongside Americans for Limited Government and Citizens Against Government Waste, and numerous other think tanks to shine some light on an issue facing 1 out of 5 Americans right now who are seeking health care in our country. It's called surprise medical billing. Brooke, welcome to Dr. Jane's DC.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Jane.
I've been excited to have you on the show. You're doing so many amazing things. And before we get into surprise medical billing, because I think I've been a victim of it myself, talk a little bit about what you think, what your thoughts are on the relationship between this coronavirus and the Democrats' desire to turn our country into a socialist, single-payer insurance system.
It's funny, Jane, 2 things can be true at the same time. This can be a pandemic and something we need to be taking very seriously, but also we know the left, we know their tactics, we know they never let a crisis go to waste, and they can also take advantage of this type of thing to push socialized medicine, which is what their mantra has been for decades, and certainly this year with Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden both saying so, even in their debates.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just brought up the debate, and the visual of the debate just blew me away because, as you know, the left hammers us on the right, conservatives, about how with their virtue signaling and how intolerant we supposedly are, and yet all they could come up with all that talent, right, out of all those 20 or 30 people, were 2 old white rich men.
Right. And so they're the party of diversity, but yet President Trump has Dr. Ben Carson and Secretary Azar and even the Surgeon General are all African American, but all they can come up with are the elderly white people that they are touting, that they're the party of diversity. They're just a bunch of liars.
They're shameless liars. The other day they said that the Corona Task Force had no women, and the president was standing in front of 2 women. So we know where they're coming from. So let's get to it. Talk about surprise medical billing and why you became a champion against it. How did that happen?
Right. Sure. So surprise medical billing, Americans are finding themselves really just suffering at 1 in 5 Americans are suffering at a surprise bill that will come their way right after they've maybe had a procedure, or maybe it was a planned procedure, or maybe they had to have emergency help at an emergency room. So certainly they show up 6 weeks later, there's a bill that's maybe $1,000 to $5,000. Sometimes it's only $60, Dr. Jane, but it can be up to $5,000 to $6,000. And that is harming Americans. We think it's the intended consequences of Obamacare. Insurance companies have to recoup their losses in some way, and really it's coming down to the American people are the ones that are suffering from Obamacare still, and we will continue to, certainly while they continue to try to push socialized medicine. Now, one thing that we're doing at MAGA Institute and why I'm interested in this so much is you recall that in 2016, Congress had the opportunity to fight Obamacare and to take it totally down, right? They have done some things as far as like removing the mandate, but the other thing is they could have removed it entirely and given it back to the private market. 2016 to 2018, when the Republicans had the House under John Boehner and then Paul Ryan, and they didn't do that. What we're doing at MAGA Institute is we are partnering with volunteers across the country. We've built a lovely brigade of people who are interested in only sending conservative and America First agenda to Congress, MAGA certified individuals that will be our champion, that will finally fight this battle. And that's what we're doing together with MAGA Institute.
Yeah, I've said often, and it's actually in my bio on Twitter, Rhino Slayer, that, these Republican fakes have really sold us out over the years. And that's how Obama got everything he wanted for 8 years. And it is high time to clean them out. I'd like to clean them out first because they're the snake in the grass. We know the enemy that the Democrats and the left is. So let me ask you this. So I know that in insurance billing, medical insurance billing, because I have a past history as a medical provider, that insurance companies will often have two types of billing. One for, or hospitals rather, providers. One for the insurance company and one when you're private paying. Has that been dealt with at all, do you know, from Congress?
I don't know, Dr. Jane. That needs to be something that they're focusing on. Currently, obviously they've taken a lot of heat in Congress and the Senate and as well after the impeachment situation, and now we're dealing with coronavirus. So people have been distracted. But we do want your listeners, if they're interested in fighting surprise medical billing, please go to our website, and that's stopsocializedmedicine.org. And there they can put in their zip code, Dr. Jane, and they can talk to their congresspersons and implore them to make the right choices, do the right path. Don't follow what they've done in California, which in California, they have stopped surprise medical billing, but the government mandates it. So that's called price control, which is another bell ringer for socialized medicine, Medicare for all of that's the same thing. And that is socialized care, which we're trying to fight against. So if they go to that website, they could talk to their congressperson, tell them their stories, help them fight surprise medical billing the right way, which there are some bills out there. Representative Phil Rowe of Texas has an alternative, and so does, I think, Joe Kennedy or Cassidy out of Louisiana. So there are options and alternatives. They don't need to take the easy road. What happened in California was it affected their rural hospitals, and their private practices have been shutting down in hordes. People are leaving California in hordes. So they really got to drill down and do the hard work and get it done the right way that helps the American people and stops harming us.
Brooke, how did you get interested in this? Did you have some prior connection with Americans for Limited Government and our dear friend Rick Manning, who's been on the show a bunch of times?
I am friends with Rick. I met Rick years ago during the Tea Party fight. I've been a part of fighting corruption for many, many years, a couple of decades almost, and I've known Rick for some years. And so we certainly, MAGA Institute, joining forces with Americans for Limited Government was a good blend, for sure.
Is the president aware of your organization?
I believe he is very well aware of Rick and Americans for Limited Government. Yes,
yes.
Rick sits down on a lot of roundtable discussions with the president and his team. Yes, ma'am. Okay,
I hope he's telling the president what you're doing, all the good work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like the main focus of your organization is, the surprise medical billing is really a very bad symptom of what we need to clean, the sort of the downsides of our healthcare system, which does need some reform. But you're really fighting the whole push from the left to turn us into a single payer system, like some of the European countries that are broke, right?
Right, exactly. So that's why it's important that everybody get involved. Like we're looking right tomorrow is Ohio and Illinois for their congressional primary. What we're doing at MAGA Institute is we are weeding out the fake conservatives. Some races have 10 to 15, maybe even 18 people on the ballot, Dr. Jane, and every one of them stands there with their hand to God and says, I'm the most conservative candidate on this ballot. And we know that's not true because we've been around enough in reality to realize that's not the case. So what we do is we drill it down. We don't just select one, maybe we select 0 in one race that may get the MAGA Institute certification, which is us saying this person has been vetted. We have agreed that this is the person that we ask you to follow, or to at least weed it down to maybe that 2 or 3 persons per race, because we have people look at their social media. We have them dig up their past. We have them go to followthemoney.org and open the books, all of the secrets behind everything they've ever said or done. Now, there is also room for forgiveness. There is room for forgiveness. I would not say I was ever a never Trumper, but I did support Senator Cruz for president until May 3rd of 2016, when I forcefully got behind President Trump. So there is room for growth because we all are evolving in this. We're all evolving, right? But it's important to know who is it we are voting for. So this way we give the voters the confidence when they go into the ballot that they can select maybe one name off of that list, maybe two, maybe select it down to 2 to 3 names off that list, but that person's been MAGA Institute certified. We've done the hard work because the American people maybe they don't have the time or the inclination to do this long work. This is a lot of work we're putting into, really, really vetting candidates. Nobody's doing that. The party can't do that. The party isn't doing that. That's not their mission. But it is the mission of MAGA Institute to certify candidates in those races.
Well, I'm glad you brought that out because, we're struggling, and we need to get the word out about your certification program because we're struggling. I mean, we're struggling in the area that I'm familiar with, but all over the country. One of the things that I do when I meet a candidate in my area, Virginia and DC, is I ask them if they when they proclaim with hand on Bible that they support President Trump and his agenda, I ask them if they put that in their campaign materials. And you can separate them right there because that's where they can't lie. And those who don't want to put them in their materials, they don't do it for a reason because they don't want to take heat and they don't want to support the president 100%. And so I love what you're doing on that front. And we also had a gentleman in D.C., Ralph Chittims, who ran for councilman at large, and he had a great experience, but he didn't win. But after that, he created in the inner cities of the District of Columbia a forum that potential candidates, he's doing a little bit of what you're doing, but on the ground in his local area, to have potential candidates sign a form, because if they do end up, kind of screwing the public once they get into office, he's got them signing a document that's saying, I will support the America First agenda, the president, smaller government,
Amen.
Those kinds of things.
And we have a pledge. We have a pledge like that.
You have a pledge.
Our pledge. Because basically what we're asking is them to make the contract with America Part 2. We're literally saying what Newt Gingrich said in the 90s, and of course Grover Norquist with Americans for Tax Reform. Will you adhere to these principles? And then we'll have it. The pledge is witnessed, and then it'll be on the website once our website's built out. So everybody can go and see if they're using that MAGA Institute certification badge that they're allowed to use on their material, and that we proclaim when we make the big announcement that they're certified, that they are adhering to those principles. We're also going to make alerts into those districts. Once we have that capability to do so, we're going to give alerts to people in those districts so they can make their voices heard when they are going against MAGA and America First principles. We've got a whole plan involved. This is very exciting work. So we need people to get behind us at magainstitute.com if they will.
Absolutely. I mean, how far reaching are you now? Are you in all 50 states? Are you connected? What's happening there?
Sure. So we just launched Wednesday, the day of CPAC, like less than about 2 weeks ago. We really just launched, and we've been at this for a while, laying the groundwork, doing all of the legal work that we have to do with trademarking and getting our incorporation. It's a not-for-profit corporation, so we've been doing all of the groundwork for a while. Yes, we are in most all states. I'm in Hawaii, but I'm overseeing what's happening all over the mainland with these races. We have volunteers. Maybe they're not in the state that they're working on because that state hasn't had their filing deadline passed yet, and that's what we do. We look at the candidates after the filing deadline has passed, just so it makes sense. You're not looking at people who say they're going to run and they didn't actually file. And so once that deadline has passed, our volunteers get on it, and sometimes they do come from other states. I have volunteers in North Carolina that worked on the California race, and also volunteers in Oklahoma. That race doesn't come up. Their primary doesn't happen until June. So those volunteers are helping me with races that are occurring right now, like tomorrow, Ohio and Illinois.
Oh my gosh, this is really exciting. I didn't even really know that this was the majority of what you did, so I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk about it. Are you dependent on donations in addition to volunteers? And I want people to know that.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yes, definitely. We're going to do a money bomb soon, probably in about a week, but our build out is still occurring. We've paid some of our build out for the website, but it is going to be a massive, massive overhaul and an ordeal, which is going to be wonderful. We really want to be the conservative Republican side of 538. We want to be the place where people can go to get the information that they need. We'll have all of the websites of all of the candidates. We'll have all of the information for all of the current those that are serving in Congress. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful resource, and I hope that it does get, some use.
Brooke, we've had in the last minute or two, we have a couple minutes left. I wanted to ask you, we've had a number of young, up and coming, pretty dedicated conservative young people running for office, and we've had them on the show. I wondered if you guys are connected with them yet. There's Laura Loomer in Florida's 21st district. Deanna Lorraine in running against Pelosi, challenging Pelosi in California 12. We have Pete Dabrowska in North Carolina 7. I'm sure I'm going to forget some of them. They're all people we've had on the show and that have kind of come up through the MAGA movement and the America First agenda. Have you connected with any of those sort of somewhat more famous people, or maybe well known because of their social media experiences?
Yeah, a little bit. The people that come to mind for me are the Buzz Patterson out of California 7, and he did win his race, so we'll be following him. Also, Lee Haywood out of North Carolina 2, I believe. We did certify North Carolina races. One of our certifications did make it onto the runoff, and that's Madison Cawthorn in North Carolina 11. And then for Texas, some of ours in Texas made it through as well, and we're following those. Some of them are runoffs, but we're following those through as well. And if anybody wants to reach out to us and they're a candidate, we welcome that. Sometimes we can't get everybody. And, like you mentioned, Florida, that's not until May, so we haven't really put that on our volunteers, really on their radar just yet. We're working on as things are coming. As I said, once the filing deadline passes, then we go in and we hit it really hard. So if that state hasn't happened yet, then we'll be looking at it prior, the several weeks prior to their actual election.
How many volunteers do you have right now?
We've got anywhere from 80 to 100. They kind of fall in and out. Sometimes that's just what happens with volunteers. And that's okay, because you've got, besides that, right now people are a little bit distracted by coronavirus and taking care of their elderly, worrying about their children at home and all the things that they're having to deal with right now with this major national emergency. So we'll pick the pieces back up very, very soon. Maybe people will be more home now and they'll be willing to volunteer more open. They'll be around a little bit more. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. There's probably a little bit of a silver lining in all this, but we certainly hope it ends soon. Okay, Brooke. Well, thanks for being on the show. I really think it's your work is important, and I think that people need to know and they need to support you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And also let me remind your listeners to go to stopsocializedmedicine.org to help us stop surprise medical billing, as well as MAGAinstitute.com if they'd like to support our effort and our project. Thank you, Dr. J.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's just repeat for me one more time, stopsocialism.org.
Stopsocializedmedicine.org.
Okay, I'm going to look that one up.
MAGAinstitute.com.
Yeah, because I want to keep up with you on what you're doing in that area as the months go on. I hope you'll come back on the show and tell us about it.
I'd love to.
Okay, great. I hope everybody goes to MAGAinstitute.org as well. .com. MAGAinstitute.com, and help Brooke out. She's doing great work. Thanks so much, Brooke. Come back again.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
My pleasure.
Stay well.
Have a great night. Hey guys, thanks for hanging in there. What a great show. I had that little audio glitch, and sometimes I'm like on the precipice of a perfect show and then God humbles me with a little bit of a glitch. And I know Ken McClinton is laughing right now, hearing me say that, but it is true. And speaking of Ken McClinton, don't go away. You're home anyway, I hope, if you're smart for now, till we figure this thing out. on this network, the Exceptional Conservative Network, founded by our chief CEO, guru, mentor, Ken McClinton. He's got the Exceptional Conservative Show starting at 9 p.m. So I want you to hang in there on this channel. You can go to theexceptionalconservative.com, where you'll see a lot of information about our network, the other shows that run regularly. And I'm thinking, maybe you guys could send me a DM on Twitter and let me know what your thoughts are, especially you people on Periscope right now watching. I know you can hear me. I'm thinking that during the national emergency right now, where we're all kind of forced to stay in a lot, I'm thinking of doing I'll do some more shows instead of just Mondays and Wednesdays. Maybe we'll do Monday through Thursday. So you may see Dr. Jane back on tomorrow at 8 p.m. I've got a few guests that are interested in coming on, and hopefully we'll put that. If I can put it together, I'll be on Monday through Thursday. Gotta save Friday to start the Sabbath. After sundown, I'm Jewish, and so we rest into Saturday. So hang in there on this coronavirus thing. Keep your eyes open. Look at all the different information. Stop hoarding and buying, crazy things like toilet paper. By the way, somebody told me the other day that the reason they thought others were buying up toilet paper like there was no tomorrow is because they thought it could fill in later on as a mask, put over their mouths. And I'm saying, look at toilet paper under a microscope. You don't really have to magnify it that much. It's a matrix. It's like a blown out matrix because it's designed to absorb liquid and other things that we don't want to talk about. It's not to block things out. Don't be stupid. Okay, just don't hoard. Don't fall into the panic trap. We're a strong, solid country with a fantastic economy, solid citizens and businesses, and we don't want to hurt our small businesses. So the sooner we can get past this thing, let's come back, like the president said today, really strong, and make sure that our small businesses, our restaurants, and and grills and bars and other small businesses in our neighborhoods come back really quickly. Let's patronize them as soon as we can. We get the word from our some people are hoarding just to make money, and that's not capitalism. In a time of need and national emergency, that just shows you the character of some people. So anyway, we are coming up on the hour. It's a minute before. I just want to tell you really quick, next show 2 days from now, I can tell you for sure, Wednesday night, is Kelly Sadler, who's the communications director at America First Action. You don't want to miss that. Kelly's got the inside scoop in the White House. And she is also former special assistant to President Donald J. Trump. So that'll be exciting to talk to her. And I'm in the process of confirming, I hope I have an email when I get off the air, Rick Manning again, who we were just talking about with Brooke. He's president for Americans for Limited Government, and Rick has always got great inside scoops. Next week, Sandra Lee, and possibly one of my new colleagues at Politichicks. Stay with us. I'm going to say goodnight from Washington, D.C., Dr. Jane's D.C. on the ground for you. We're the show that asks the hard questions and we take the hits. Stay tuned for Ken McClinton and the Exceptional Conservative Show. Stay safe and have a great night.